So you're taking your first step into blogging. You need to define your niche. After all, it's a key factor. It's key not just because it will be interesting to your audience, but also because it will be interesting to you. A huge problem for bloggers is when they choose a trendy topic that they're not really interested in at all. And the problem is that we quickly burn out on topics that don't interest us. We lose interest in working on our blog because the topic itself isn't ours. So it's really important to align your interests with those of your audience. We are no longer interested in our blog because the topic itself is not ours. So, a very important factor here is to align your interests with those of your audience. It could be a skill or a talent, such as a hobby, an ability, or even a knack for something that you've developed and use on a daily basis. As I mentioned earlier, you can draw, sing, craft, invent something, and you realize that there's interest in this topic from your audience. So, that's not a bad option. That's not a bad option, especially if you can find a trending topic that's related to your interests and your audience's interests. For instance, you could explore various platforms to identify what topics are currently gaining traction. If this topic also becomes trendy, then your reach will increase many times over. Engaging with these topics can help you connect more deeply with your audience. What tools can we use to identify a trending topic? There are different strategies here. We can see something on social media. For example, we start scrolling through our feed and we realize that this topic is being talked about from every corner right now. So we understand that there's some kind of trend. We can even thoroughly examine it using techniques from digital marketers, such as Google Trends. There's a useful tool called Google Trends. This tool helps you uncover which words and phrases are most frequently searched for on the internet in Google. So if people are frequently turning to this topic, it means that it's in demand, and analyze. Everyone is looking for this topic. Well, if people are definitely searching for it on Google, then they'll most likely be looking for it on social media too. And if your video and your blog are certainly dedicated to this topic, you'll organically attract a huge audience to your blog. There are also tools like Social Blade or YouTube Analytics. You can always check what people are posting, what they're talking about on YouTube, and which videos are getting the most views. This is also a sign that will tell you that this topic is relevant. So, if you realize that you found a topic that's in demand and it's at least somewhat related to your interests, try to adapt it to your own interests and create your media product, your content that you'll post on your social media. Next, we'll talk about the importance of defining certain formats. We need to understand that we have, let's say, 3-4 formats and 5 to 10 topics that we'll cover in our blog. Next, we'll talk about the importance of defining certain formats. We must understand that we have, let's say, 3-4 formats and 5 to 10 topics that we will cover in our blog. An important point is that when you find the format and content topic that resonates best, that gives you more reach, engagement, and interest from the audience. You should remember these formats because you'll be using them over and over again. You'll create new videos based on these formats and topics just from a different angle, using different situations, different objects, different people, and different examples. But overall, you start repeating what works best. You'll be creating new videos based on these formats and topics, just from a different angle, using different situations, different objects, different people, and different examples. But overall, you start repeating what works best. Many people are put off by this, but there's really no problem with it because all the traffic comes from recommendations, and no one will see your very first video after a while. So sometimes you can even repeat it. Well, let's move on to the next lesson. There are so many bloggers and I don't know how to stand out. After all, I'll be just one in 100 or 1,000 other bloggers. These thoughts cross the minds of many who start a blog, and they feel like they can't offer anything unique. But that's a mistaken belief. Every person is unique in their essence. Everyone has their own traits, their own characteristics, and their own life experiences that can be applied to their blog. Even the lens through which you view life is already your uniqueness. You can look at the same story, the same situation, from the perspective of 10, 100, or 1,000 people, and they'll all be different. Yes, it's possible that something will be similar. You might say that this group of people is talking about the same thing. But if you take a closer look and ask guiding questions, you'll see how their opinions will start to differ. As an experienced marketer, I can tell you that it's important to have a unique selling proposition, or USP. What is a USP in marketing? Basically, it's what highlights the value of the product. Imagine that your blog and you are a product, a media product, and how can you highlight your value? The value of your blog, and it usually appears like this. Subscribe to me if you definitely want to learn how to create a blog with 1 million views, or absolutely subscribe to me if you indeed want to learn how to create a very successful blog. And there can be a ton of options. The only question is whether this USP resonates with your audience. So what you say should actually be an answer to the question that your viewer is looking for. An example, people who are struggling with excess weight want to lose weight, want to shed 10-20 kilograms, and you have a fitness blog where you share specific programs, techniques, nutrition tips, and so on. And in the end, you have a call to action. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to get in shape by this summer. Yes, that sounds really resonant. So people usually don't think much about getting in shape during the winter, but in spring and closer to summer, some people really start to get into sports, especially right at the beginning of summer. So we attract the target audience that has that kind of lifestyle. In winter, we don't care. We wear a lot of clothes, so it's not visible. And by summer, we need to get ourselves in shape. So this USP will work, and every blog should have a USP. If you have a cooking blog, for example, subscribe if you want to learn how to cook deliciously. You're welcome. These are simple examples. I advise you to sit down, think, create 10-15 different USPs, and choose the one that fits your target audience the best. It's also important to find your uniqueness, your special touch, your distinctive feature. I will talk about this more than once, and I'm already talking about it. This uniqueness is something you already have. It's built into your nature, into your personality. But it's important that this uniqueness is reflected in your content. There should be some kind of anchor. To make your blog memorable, find a unique trait like a catchphrase or charisma. Show it confidently to help viewers remember you and your content, creating an anchoring effect. And indeed, we use that approach now. But if you have an even more distinctive feature, a catchphrase, an action, a facial expression, charisma, anything at all, if you find that uniqueness within yourself, and most importantly, aren't shy about revealing it, then that will be the key to your blog's success. Because your blog will gain a certain uniqueness, and that uniqueness will help viewers remember you, your content, and your blog better. The next time a viewer sees you in their recommended feed, they'll immediately recall you. There will be some kind of anchoring effect. I hope we've figured out your blog's uniqueness and how to find that special touch more clearly. Well, now let's move on. We're going to go through short lessons with you, about 5 minutes each, so that each topic is separate and you have time to switch from one topic to another. I've always been lucky in life and managed to create projects with a very narrow target audience. I don't know why. Maybe because you always had to reinvent the wheel there. If you want to create a successful blog, don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a clear understanding that some topics are in demand while others are not. In some topics, the competition is high, while in others, it's low. It all depends on the niche you enter. But sometimes, even in a narrow niche, you can find a broader topic. And I'll say this, it's important to understand, besides these narrow and broad topics, also the trends. Let me give you an example. At the moment I'm recording this lesson, we're in a certain cycle where cryptocurrencies are really making a lot of noise. This happens every 4 years. So right now we can see that social media feeds are filled with certain content. And it's becoming more because today there are topics that are being discussed. And the more a topic is discussed, the more mentions it will get. How long lasting is this topic? Well, from my personal experience, I can say that it all goes in waves. So, when the hype around a certain topic dies down, you need to understand what you're going to talk about next. So, It could be your financial blog or something else. But you need to understand that any hype eventually fades away. And basing your blog on hype probably wouldn't be the right approach. You might run into the same problem I mentioned in the first lessons. If you don't remember, just revisit it. If a topic isn't interesting to you, it will lead to your blog becoming uninteresting for you. So it's better to think about the topic in advance and not get carried away by the hype. Again, there are evergreen topics, and there are topics with low competition. You need to understand that where there's low competition, there's also a small audience. You can't grow large multi-million audiences there. Usually these are some specific topics. Let's try to come up with some examples. Let's put it this way. Investing in diamonds. I have this client whom I helped grow into a blogger, and he promotes his business through content. The topic is narrow. Why? Well, because there are actually not many people with money, and even fewer of them are on social media. Selling private jets, yeah, that's also a narrow topic. You can try to build an audience there, but the content you cover in your topic needs to be understandable to a wide audience. That is, if you just talk about, for example, some technical things, then you will capture the techno-ray. If you talk about your luxurious life, how great you're living, then most likely you'll attract people who also want to live like that. Well, and partly haters who will hate you. And if, for example, we take a simple example, we have a blog about hockey, who will be the target audience? Well, those who love hockey. For example, I wouldn't subscribe to that blog because I'm not a hockey fan. And at the same time, I'm a fan of racing, but someone who loves hockey won't subscribe to an account dedicated to racing. This is the foundation that needs to be understood. So, if we want to broaden this topic, we can develop, for example, a blog about winter. Activities, winter, hobbies, winter pastimes with family. And here we have ice skating, hockey, sledding, skiing, building a snowman, having snowball fights, and so on. Everything related to winter activities. I hope this example showed you how you can expand a small topic to get more reach. But the one thing you need to understand is why you're creating the blog. If your goal, for example, is to promote ice skating or hockey or attract manufacturers related to that theme, then of course it doesn't make sense to broaden your focus. These are the factors that need to be taken into account. Otherwise, of course, the marketers in those companies will analyze your target audience and realize that if half of your content is about playing in the snow or building snowmen and having fun in the snow, then it's unlikely we'll find an audience that's into competitive figure skating. These are the marketing things that you definitely need to know. And of course, there are certain evergreen topics that are always in demand. It's sports, it's nutrition, it's entertainment, it's humor, and so on. Well, let's move on to the next lesson.